So I want you to imagine stepping out into the howling dark of this just freezing storm.
Oh, yeah, like absolute worst case scenario weather.
Exactly. You're standing right at the edge of a precipice, and the wind is whipping ice across your face. And, every single instinct in your biology, like millions of years of evolutionary programming, is just screaming at you to turn back.
Right, to seek shelter, to shrink away from the edge.
Yeah, but you step forward anyway, and you aren't doing it just to survive the night. You're stepping into that storm because you want to achieve something legendary.
Which is such a visceral image to open with. I mean, because it instantly strips away all that insulation we spend our entire lives building.
We really do build a lot of it, don't we?
We absolutely do. We construct physical walls, financial safety nets, social routines, and it's all specifically to avoid that exact feeling.
Right, the feeling of standing totally unprotected in the cold.
Exactly. So placing you right at the razor's edge of human endurance like that, it forces a really fundamental question about what drives deliberate action when, all those safety nets are just gone.
And that tension is exactly why we're plunging into this material today. We have a really fascinating stack of notes breaking down a text titled The Fringe of Battle.
It is a phenomenal piece of literature.
It really is. It's steeped in the wuxia tradition, completely loaded with this intense martial poetry.
Right.
And our mission for this deep dive is to basically decode the mechanics behind all this imagery. We want to understand how the Fringe of Battle captures the Eastern chivalrous spirit, which is known as Sia.
Sia, yes.
And we want to translate these epic metaphors into a highly relevant philosophy for anyone listening who is trying to build something significant or maybe navigate a high-stakes environment right now.
And I think for those who might be unfamiliar, the wuxia genre focuses on martial heroes, but reducing it to just physical combat is a
Yeah.
severe misreading of the material.
Yeah, it's not just about, sword fights.
Not at all. The swords, the storms, the battles, they are all allegorical. It's really an exploration of the internal architecture required to sustain ambition in a hostile world.
The mindset.
Exactly. The Shia spirit is less about how to swing a blade and entirely about how to construct an unbreakable mind.
Well, let's start with that internal architecture because the opening of the text forces us right onto the blade.
Literally onto the blade, yeah.
Right. The imagery places our warrior in that freezing storm we talked about, but they aren't just trudging through snow. The text says they are walking on pads sharp as ice blades.
Which is such a terrifying visual.
It is. They are cautious but completely resolute. The margin for error here is absolute zero.
And when you're walking on an ice blade, any turbulent movement is lethal. The physical danger is extreme, but the text is actually highlighting a psychological crisis.
How so?
Well, the natural, involuntary reaction to that scenario is panic, right? Your attention narrows entirely to the threat.
Oh, sure, you'd just be staring at your feet.
Exactly. You're hyper-focused on the sharpness of the ice, the freezing wind, the sheer drop.
I picture a trauma surgeon in an operating room.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Yeah, like the monitors are flatlining, blood pressure's dropping, and they have a scalpel hovering over a major artery.
1 millimeter in the wrong direction.
Or even just 1 second of hesitation, and it results in catastrophe.
Right.
Or maybe like a crisis manager at a global company staring down a massive scandal. A single misphrased public statement triggers a multi-billion-dollar collapse.
Yes, it's that suffocating sensation of moving forward when one wrong step means total ruin.
But in those zero margin scenarios, I mean, the instinct is to tense up, right? To try and
Mm.
rigidly control every single variable.
It is, but the text argues that trying to fight the storm or hyperfixating on the danger of the ice blade is exactly what causes the fatal slip.
Interesting. So what's the alternative?
The core mechanism of the Shia spirit introduced here is inner tranquility.
Okay, but how does that actually work mechanically?
What do you mean?
Because telling someone to just be calm while they're standing on an ice blade in a blizzard, well, that sounds like terrible advice. The biology is demanding panic.
Right. Yeah, it isn't about ignoring the fear or pretending the ice isn't sharp. That's delusion, not tranquility.
So it's not about blind optimism.
Not at all. True mastery is the complete dissolution of the internal turbulence. It works through this really profound expansion of awareness.
Expand on that. What does an expanded awareness look like here?
Well, instead of shrinking your focus to the single terrifying point of the blade, you expand your senses to take in the entirety of the environment.
Oh, wow.
You accept the cold, the wind, and the danger as constants rather than fighting them as variables.
So you stop fighting the reality of the situation.
Exactly. By accepting the extreme conditions, the mind becomes like a still pond. And only from that state of absolute internal stillness can you take deliberate, precise physical action.
I see. But having that inner tranquility alone doesn't actually move you forward, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Because if you just achieve perfect stillness while standing on an ice blade, you are eventually going to freeze to death.
Right. You can't just stand there forever.
The tranquility is the prerequisite, but it has to be converted into momentum.
Which is why the text doesn't let the warrior stay still. Once the internal environment is stabilized, the senses become hyper-aware, and the warrior must tune into a deeper rhythm to navigate all that chaos.
And this is where we hit some of the most striking imagery in the entire piece, but I have to admit, it left me stuck for a minute.
The transition in Act 2.
Yeah. The text sets up this really vivid sensory tableau. It's a solitary zither melody piercing the galaxies, contrasted against a fierce hawk-like shadow tearing through the howling gale.
Ah, yes. The concept of cosmic resonance.
Right. But wait, I need to push back on this pairing for a second.
Go for it.
You have a delicate zither, which is an ancient plucked string instrument, and you're pairing it with a brutal predatory hawk.
Right.
Those are fundamentally opposing energies. One is a quiet artist, and the other is a violent hunter.
They seem like opposites, yes.
Not to mention the physics of it. A quiet stringed instrument would be instantly drowned out by a howling gale. Why use that specific metaphor instead of something overwhelming like a war drum?
Well, that paradox is exactly the point.
Really?
Yes. If we look at the mechanics of sound and motion, this pairing represents the dual, often contradictory mindset required to sustain greatness.
Okay, break that down for me.
Think about the nature of a plucked string. It requires immense calculated tension to produce a pure note. That zither melody represents the internal principle, the vision.
Oh, I see.
It doesn't need to be loud like a war drum to pierce the cosmos. It needs to be pure. It is a frequency so clear and unwavering that it cuts straight through the broadband noise of the universe.
So the zither is the internal signal cutting through the external static.
Yes, exactly. It is the uncompromising solitary law the warrior holds in their mind. But a pure principle doesn't build a legacy on its own.
Right, you need action.
You need an execution strategy that survives the physical world, and that is the hawk.
Ah, the hawk.
The hawk represents the external adaptation. Notice that the hawk isn't fighting the gale. A bird of prey doesn't flap furiously against a storm.
It uses it.
Precisely. It uses the aerodynamic chaos, the updrafts, and the sheer force of the wind to dive faster and strike harder.
So the zither provides the rigid internal law, and the hawk provides the absolute external flexibility.
Exactly.
You have to hold a delicate, unwavering vision while simultaneously executing with ruthless, adaptive speed in the real world.
It is the ultimate fusion of artist and predator. And the problem is, most people lean entirely into one or the other.
They pick a side.
Right. They're all vision, playing a beautiful zither in their minds while the storm tears them to pieces. Or they're all predatory reaction.
Fighting blindly like a hawk, but with no underlying purpose or direction.
Exactly. The Shia philosophy demands both. You cultivate the quiet, solitary clarity of the cosmos internally, while mastering the violent, unpredictable physics of the gale externally.
The clarity of the zither and the speed of the hawk prepare you for action, but, you still need an arena. You need a place to actually apply this dual mindset.
Yes, the environment where this takes place.
And the text moves from the individual warrior's mind into the broader philosophy of how enduring legacies are actually forged. And honestly, it completely dismantles the way our modern culture usually talks about achievement.
It really takes direct aim at this whole concept of luck and the human desire for predictability.
Yeah, the text insists that legendary achievements are never the result of good fortune. They are built through absolute daring and what it calls strategic chaos.
Strategic chaos. Such a great phrase.
It is. The metaphor it introduces is ancient rivers unleashing uncontrollable waves. And when I read strategic chaos, I immediately pictured a controlled demolition of a massive skyscraper.
Oh, that is a perfect mechanism to explain the concept.
Right, because to a bystander walking down the street, that collapsing skyscraper looks like an apocalyptic disaster. There's dust billowing everywhere, steel beams buckling, deafening noise. It looks entirely uncontrollable.
Clay pandemonium.
But to the architect at the demolition, to the engineer who placed the charges, it is an intentional harnessing of immense destructive momentum. They are utilizing gravity and calculated fractures.
It's totally by design.
Exactly. Or think of a truly disruptive technology startup. To the legacy companies, the market looks like it has descended into pure chaos. But to the founders driving the disruption, it is a highly calculated strategy.
Taking that demolition analogy a step further, the bystander calls it a disaster because they don't understand the physics of what is happening.
Right.
And the same psychological mechanism applies to how society views massive success. When people witness someone achieve a monumental legacy, the default reaction is often, oh, they got lucky. They happened to catch a good wave.
Because admitting that the success required deliberately triggering a controlled demolition of their life or their industry, well, that's just too terrifying for most people to process.
Precisely. We spend our lives trying to reduce entropy. We build dams against the river because we want safety and predictability.
We want things to stay calm.
But the Sia philosophy violently rejects that defensive posture. To forge a legacy, you cannot sit behind a dam hoping the water stays calm. You have to deliberately step into the terrifying, high-entropy environments, the uncontrollable, ancient rivers of history.
Wow.
The chaos isn't an accident you were hoping to avoid. It is the necessary heat of the forge.
So strategic chaos means the warrior is actively seeking out the wave that would drown an average person because that wave contains the raw kinetic energy required to move them forward.
Yes,
The danger is the engine.
it is. And if you expect the world to be safe and predictable, every uncontrollable wave feels like an unfair tragedy.
Right. You feel like a victim.
Exactly. The moment you accept that the river is inherently violent and uncontrollable, you stop wasting your energy building dams and you start learning the fluid dynamics of the water. You learn to surf.
You use the water.
The Shia warrior uses the very chaos that paralyzes everyone else to accelerate their own ascent.
That is a massive cognitive shift. It reframes the most terrifying parts of an endeavor as the most valuable.
It changes everything.
But if you are living like this, walking on ice blades, maintaining the tension of a zither while diving like a hawk, and actively seeking out the uncontrollable waves of strategic chaos.
It sounds exhausting, right?
It does. What is the toll? Where does this trajectory actually end?
It leads to the final evolution in the text, which is the culmination of the chivalrous spirit.
The climax of the Fringe of Battle paints a really triumphant picture. It describes the warrior finally trampling the freezing peaks underfoot, carving out a celestial way, and looking back at 100 battlefields with fierce passion and sovereign pride.
Such a powerful image.
But my immediate question when reading this was about the psychological cost. When you hear the phrase, looking back at 100 battlefields, does that imply deep trauma?
Like they're broken.
Yeah, exactly. Is this warrior just scarred, broken, and exhausted by a lifetime of constant friction?
If they were operating from a Western framework of simply enduring suffering, well, perhaps. But the text describes a profound phase shift here.
What kind of shift?
Look closely at the evolution of the physical environment. In the beginning, the warrior was taking cautious, tranquil steps because the freezing storm and the ice blades were a mortal threat.
Right. The margin for error was zero.
But by the climax, those same freezing elements have become freezing peaks that are simply trampled underfoot.
Oh, I see. The environment itself hasn't softened. The mountain is still freezing.
Exactly.
But the warrior's relationship to gravity and danger has fundamentally changed. What used to be a lethal threat is now just the ground they walk on.
The text calls it carving a celestial way. They have transcended the ordinary earthly friction that binds everyone else.
They've outgrown it.
Right. They are no longer operating under the gravity of fear. So when they look back at those 100 battlefields, they aren't looking back through the lens of victimization or weariness. They look back with sovereign pride.
Sovereign pride. Meaning they're the absolute author of their history.
Yes.
The battlefields didn't happen to them. They orchestrated their path through the battlefields.
The struggle validates the ascent. In this philosophy, you don't reach the celestial way in spite of the 100 battlefields. The 100 battlefields are the very stones that paved the celestial way.
That is so profound.
Every time you maintained inner tranquility on the ice blade, every time you balanced the zither and the hawk, every uncontrollable wave of chaos you successfully rode, it all compounded into this impenetrable state of sovereign pride.
The trauma is converted into fierce passion because the warrior knows exactly what it costs to stand on that peak. Nobody handed it to them.
No, they didn't get lucky.
They harness the storm.
It is the ultimate ownership of one's destiny.
This entire text is a masterclass in the mechanics of ambition. Let's trace the full evolution of this philosophy really quickly. It begins by confronting the razor's edge, learning that when the margins for error are zero, the solution isn't to fight the fear, but to dissolve it through an expanded awareness, achieving that inner tranquility while standing on the ice blade.
Which then allows the mind to hold a dual nature of the cosmic resonance,
Right.
maintaining the pure, unwavering internal principle of the zither, while executing with the fluid aerodynamic violence of the hawk.
And from there, taking that dual mindset into the arena by rejecting the illusion of luck and safety, embracing strategic chaos, realizing that the uncontrollable rivers of history aren't there to drown you, but to provide the raw kinetic energy needed to build a legacy.
Culminating in the celestial ascent, experiencing that fundamental phase shift where the lethal threats of the past become the conquered ground beneath your feet, allowing you to view your own history with total sovereign pride.
The true value of diving into the fringe of battle isn't just to appreciate a piece of ancient wuxia literature. It is to recognize that this is a highly technical blueprint for whatever massive endeavor you are currently navigating. The principles of the Shia spirit haven't expired. Your volatile market, your high-stakes project, the personal crisis you are managing, those are your ice blades.
They are.
The vision you are trying to execute is your zither. The legacy you are trying to build is your celestial way.
The philosophy challenges us to fundamentally alter our expectation of the environment. We suffer because we expect the path to greatness to be safe, predictable, and calm.
But it's not.
No. The text argues that the path is supposed to be a freezing, chaotic storm.
But friction isn't a glitch in the system. The friction is the system.
Which leaves us with a final thought to examine as you step back into your own life.
Let's hear it.
The text guarantees that if you master this mindset, you will eventually look back at your history with fierce passion. So consider the most grueling, chaotic, uncontrollable battle you are fighting right now, the one that feels like it might drown you. What if that specific struggle is not an interruption to your life's work, but the very terrain you will one day look back on with the deepest sovereign pride? What if the storm you are standing in today isn't there to break you, but to serve as the absolute foundation of your celestial ascent?